morning. It is Insomniac hours, so it is midnight Eastern Standard Time, so it is morning now. Usually I'd be like, good morning, good evening, but no, we just say good morning because this is the hour of power, the tower of power. This is the hour where we talk to those who cannot sleep at night. Insomniac Hour. I am Josh. That is my co-host for the night, Matt Ponte, and we are talking to you tonight about, the mind and electronics and how those two interact with each other. We've heard the word psychotronics before. I've heard it pertaining to the embassies and these weapons that are being utilized at the embassies, these microwave weapons. But psychotronics is actually a topic of study that started in Russia, I believe, with the development of various types of microwave weapons that could influence the human brain and the human body. Now, if you ever remember back like 10 years ago when you had a lot of protests happening about the Occupy Wall Street, they used something known as an LRAD. This was an acoustical device that produced a sound frequency that made you want to poop your pants. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a type of psychotronic weapon. It manipulates the frequencies, the natural harmonic frequencies of the body by producing dissonance and produces some type of state change or effect. Now, those are weapons, but we're not necessarily talking about all the weapons today. We're also talking about a lot of the various other aspects. For instance, the ability for human beings to change the results of random number generators, which after 100 certain trials of random number generators, you should have a probability of about 50-50. It's like flipping the heads and the tails of a penny over a nickel or a dime. But what we see is we've had certain test studies that have shown that even an 86% of the flips of a random number generator were aligned towards the intention of a user group. And this would be another form of psychotronics because the mind is influencing energy or technology. One of the good examples that I saw of this was of a plant, and this is one that Dimitri talked about a lot, is that you would have a dark room and you would have a light on one side of the room, and the light was, I think the light was like on a, kind of like a random, like a random generated, direction. Yeah, it was on a random generated direction, and every single time the light would find the plant. Mm-hmm. And the only way that you can explain this was that the plant was giving off some type of signal that was pulling the light in, and that doesn't make any sense unless it's psychotronic. So yeah, this is what is this saying? Delaying your video. Oh, I don't care about that. Facebook saying, "Oh my God, you got a problem. We're delaying your video metrics." Why? I don't care. Anyways, Matt, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, man.
What is new in your world in your neck of the woods?
Not much, actually.
Yeah?
Same old shit. Studying, learning about the mind, consciousness, intelligence, pushing business forward. Have a few new things we're going to be launching here in the next couple of weeks. All about actually mind, how to reprogram the subconscious mind using technology combined with neuro reprogramming techniques, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Neuro reprogramming techniques. Now you said something there. You said intelligence. Now, I find it very interesting because most people in the world, especially those that we proclaim to have intelligence, they actually don't have intelligence at all. They have something known as intellect. Intellect is your capacity to learn. And we should never confuse that with the capacity to retain knowledge and act it into wisdom, which we call intelligence. Because the majority of the people out there that I see that we proclaim to have intelligence actually just have a very high intellect.
Yep. Yeah, also able to just kind of draw on their memory banks a lot quicker, contrast and compare, those kind of things. But yeah, psychotronics is really interesting. There was, I forget, I don't know if it was a declassified CIA document or something that I was looking at, or it was a story that I was reading. I forget what it was, but there was a guy that worked for this branch of the government. I don't think it was the deep state. It was just an intelligence agency, and he was using their weapons to because he was an obsessive compulsive stalker, and his girlfriend or his ex-wife, he was using it to essentially like eavesdrop on her, to impose like nausea, headaches, all kinds of stuff on her, and everything as well. I forget where I read it, but I was just like, wow, talking about dating the wrong person,
Right.
like getting hooked up with the wrong person. And you'd think that they would, have, kind of like psyche valves for people, but yeah, there's so much of it out there that we don't even know about. That's used, like you mentioned, LRAD is one of them. And
well, we've been seeing it in the embassies. They first started in China and then in Cuba. And it was quite interesting because what we were seeing out there is people were having headaches and other types of things that were occurring to them, but they were pertained to what we believe to be neuro weapons, or weapons that basically target the neurological system. Now, I find this highly interesting because, if there's weapons out there that can target your neurological system, that can target your brain function, your alpha, your theta, your delta, these types of wave functions, then shit, we need to start developing some type of a defense mechanism against these things.
yeah, so what would that be? So those things work on consciousness levels, essentially. And so the first thing that would pop up to my mind would be, and this might sound a little out there, but like magic,
Yeah.
creating your own wards, your own psychic wards of protection. That would be one thing. This might sound weird to people, but I actually do it every morning. It's part of my morning ritual. Psychic attacks are a real thing. I actually have some friends who are going through some this last week. We were able to identify what they were. Being able to use the power of visualization, which is something that I really teach a lot too, and using that in combination with meditation and these practices. I only use the word magic so that way kind of people kind of know what I'm talking about, but really it's these abilities that everybody we're born with, call it telepathic, call it psychic powers, call it our inherent human powers.
Right. Well, that would be the honing in on what we actually have in the sense of the conscious relationship. And we went over, we've everybody here in this group that's watching this show, unless they're new, and if you're new, subscribe. But they've gone through the 3-day course that we did on natural law and the origins of magic. What magic really is at its core basis, the ability of one individual to benefit or to influence reality for the benefit of themselves or for another group without the interference of someone else's free will. Whereas
that's white magic, yeah.
Yep, and then black magic would be the through ignorance. And so you have to add through ignorance or nescience in there in the sense of natural law. They proclaim to be derived through natural law, but they go around the level of knowledge. They remove knowledge from the situation. This is why a lot of knowledge has been occulted in the world. And this is what we talked about the last few nights is occultism and, de-occulting, right? And bringing this information all out there for people to understand these things. And Patriot Pisces, she's out there. What course? Course, we did a 3-day Insomniac hour. 3-hour Insomniac hour. It was 3 days of Insomniac hour pertaining to that topic. And I'm actually building a course right now. It's probably going to be a week long. It's going to be in the courses section of the social Redpill. So if you're not on there and you're interested in learning about the occult, esotericism, magic, the mind, integration, consciousness, how all this stuff works and influencing your own reality, that course will be on there on the social Red Pill here very soon, and you can find the social
Cool.
Red Pill by redpills.tv/social. What's that,
Cool.
man?
I said, cool. That's cool. Do you go like as deep as like into the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life and using those things, or?
So yes and no. More aligned towards. See, a lot of these things they derive from very very simple and understandable concepts. And see, with occult knowledge, one of the things that's been derived from that is to basically run circles around the truth. This is why in the Freemasons, like for instance, the Freemasons, that G in the middle. Do you know what that G means? That's
Darn it,
right.
you had to ask me. I
Well,
do know.
No, everybody's going to say something different.
Yeah, I actually discovered a few months ago what the real meaning of the G means.
Okay.
I can't remember it.
So some people are going to say that it means geometry. Some people are going to say that it means God. But it actually means generative force.
Yes,
It represents the generative force. And this is what you learn at the higher levels. And the generative force is what we actually call the beginnings, right? And this is why the first book of the Hebrew Bible was renamed in about 1600s to Genesis. Now, originally, the first books of the Torah were just the initials of the Torah. And it didn't necessarily have any books, but we can call it the Book of Beginnings and so forth. But this generative force is what manifests, okay? If we think about the Trinity, when the masculine and the feminine come together, when the knife and the chalice come together, they form the Star of David, right? And so this is the merging of the sun and the moon, right?
Yep.
Now, the sun and the moon also are the hemispheres of the brain. The left brain would be the sun, the right brain would be the moon. And so the merging of the sun and the moon, the Salmon represents a temple. Solomon's temple. And this is the merging of the Star of the David that we've seen in sacred geometry. And so when you get into Kabbalah and these types of things, what you're really learning about is this thing and how it integrates with all of this out here.
Yeah. It's just like alchemy, the same thing.
Right.
When
Well,
they
it is alchemy.
come together,
Yeah.
it's mercury, essentially, and so that's the that's the big the thing, the emerald tablets, Hermes Trismegistus, all of the initiates. Their biggest thing was, you actually introduced this to me almost 2 years ago. You gave me that one pamphlet, and then from then on it was a rabbit hole.
That 6-hour introduction till 4 a.m, 5 a.m. over beers.
Yeah, and then from then on it's been a rabbit hole that hasn't quite come to completion. But it's all it is essentially different symbolism and a spinning of words, so that way they think that people are trying to create the sorcerer's gold, or the trying to, what's the word? I'm using the wrong words. I know.
Philosopher's Stone.
The philosopher's stone.
And it's the alchemical process, the alchemical marriage
of enlightenment. Yeah.
And really what that is taking the base metal of lead and turning it into gold. And really what it's talking about is taking the seed of life. So you know how people see the flower of life? It's actually known as the seed of life. And the reason is because that flower has to blossom. That flower is a representative of your soul. If you take the cross-sectional variation of a DNA strand, guess what you get? You get the seed of life. And the reason why is because under they found this out through many different types of studies, is that when you're in a state of induced fear, your DNA actually shrivels up and does not express itself. But when you're in a state of happiness and joy and love and passion and gratitude, it expands.
Yep.
And so what happens there is that seed has to blossom. It has to be opened up. And that it can only come about through the will of the individual. And so what we're talking about here when we get into Kabbalah and so forth is we're talking about natural law and the derivation of natural law and a body of information that comes about upon one group study into what natural law is, how natural law works, how it integrates into reality, who created natural law, who that creator might have been, how that creator set about different variations of laws, introduction into influence within that, so subsections of those laws, and then really the foundational basis of magic, which is kind of what we talk about all the time. But I don't get too much into, the Rosicrucian orders, the Kabbalic orders, or the Hermetic orders, or any of these things. The reason being is because they have their own dialect, if you want to talk, their own base of knowledge. And I'm familiar with them on a very, very broad level. But it's more or less what I wanted to do is to set a foundational basis of it, is bring about and show people that, hey, look, at the end of the day, if you took yourself for 30 years of education and training into the mystical arts, which I have, what you're going to come out with is this understanding. And some people get it right away, like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. And that's how I developed optimization theory. Optimization theory was from the study and the understanding of how all these things operate to come to one simple conclusion, is that there is only one thing happening in the entirety of the universe. There is nothing outside of that. Every physical law, every law that can come about in the whole entire universe is derived from this one process. All the stars, all the galaxies, all the interactions of atoms and molecules, every human interaction, gravity, electromagnetism, everything can be explained by this one simple thing that occurs over and over and over again. And that is that energy is exchanged from a high to a low, the law of conservation of energy. Two systems come into relation with each other and begin the process of exchange to a point of optimization, not to a point of low energy position, but to a point of optimization. And this is one of the big misnomers in thermodynamics that always has to be looked at, because they say that energy is neither created nor destroyed, it's only transferred from one medium to another, a high to a low. But we always hear this law of entropy where everything is moving towards this lowest energy state. That's actually not true. We can see this through the law of conservation of energy, or through what I call optimization theory, is that systems don't move to the lowest energy state of the primary system. They move to the balanced or optimized energy state of the two systems' relationship. Because here's the thing, is if we have a low state and a high state, the lowest energy state is that of the low state system. But they don't. They come to a median aggregation, which is optimization of those two states to form a new third state, an emergent state. And this is what we're talking about when they talk about the Trinity, the masculine and feminine merging, the alchemical wedding, is you produce this new third state. This is the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone is the knowledge pertained within the process of the alchemical wedding. This is also what we're talking about with the merging of the sun and the moon, Solomon's temple. Understanding how the chalice and the shaft come together to form this emergent state of consciousness that you exist in right now, but is sitting at such a low vibratory rate because you don't understand how to grow their seeds. And this is the dilemma with most people, is they don't understand the process of magic to move it to the next level, to the next point.
And that's what the whole thing with the black and the gold of the Egyptians, the black and the gold snake, essentially crossing up the staff, meeting together at the third eye. It is the alchemy of the opposing energies to create and to recreate. And it's also a Kundalini practice and process that can be done as well. But yeah, it's good that I don't think you know this. I'm actually a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. I'm still in the late stages of the neophyte. But I can tell you now that there's just a lot of like pomp and circumstance that is not necessary. And I think it's like good that you're creating the course of what you're doing, introducing people to magic in the basic way, just like you did, with me, the years ago. Because one of the problems with magic is that a lot of people don't know is that there have been a lot of inverted symbols and inverted signs, and it's been distorted through the centuries and people that think that they're trying to practice good magic are really actually not. And it's kind of like playing with a loaded gun. And so
our second day of this 3-day Insomniac hour where we talked about this. We talked about hijacking the occult, how in the mid 1850s to 1950s, this whole occult information was hijacked to a large degree by what we'd call today as the Luciferian Society, or even Satanists, which are two different sects. But spot on. And I was a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn a long time ago, although I disagreed with a lot of... So the one biggest problem I have with what we'll call institutionalized magic, it's just like institutionalized religion, is they have a process. And that whether you're a neophyte or an adept, an initiate, whatever it might be, is each step of the ladder gives you a new unveiling of the information, a new lesson that builds upon the prior corresponding lesson. And just like what we see in Freemasonry, that is a lie. The majority of it, what is being taught, like you just said, is a lie. It's completely, it's not BS, but it's meant to deceive you to see if they can trust you. We got to understand is that the knowledge that was held by these ancients, they were under attack. They were being persecuted, hung in the streets, burned at the cross. And this was 2,000, 3,000 years ago. Yeah. They destroyed the Library of Alexandria. They destroyed, Atlantis with the carriers of this magic. And so what we see them going into the darkness, into the shadows, and carrying the torch of knowledge and passing it from initiate to adept, right? To keep this knowledge flowing, but only so much to the point where they could trust that person. This is why they say the lips of wisdom are sealed to those who do not have the ear of understanding. And that only when the student is ready, the master shall appear. These things are pertinent too, that the master, the teacher, will find you when you're ready. And this is the truth, and I can contest to this. But if we go to medieval times, is they found a new way, to get this information out there. And they hid it in literature. They hid it in music. They hid it in science. They hid it in philosophy. They hid it in religion right before people's eyes. Even knowing that they could be castrated and burned at the stake if they didn't. But this information had to be occulted during a certain time because it was not accepted as the rule of law or the rule of God, and that it was dangerous information for a normal person to know. Just think about it. If the whole world knew the truth, that they literally create their own reality, and if they worked together and all focused their attention and intention directed at one cause, it would change instantaneously. The power structures of this world would crumble in a heartbeat.
Yep.
And see, that's the truth.
Yeah. That's what's beginning to happen.
I agree. That is exactly what is beginning to happen.
Yeah. That's why everything's falling apart. But I've actually so they've given me access to all of their literature. So I read ahead, practiced a lot of the God force assumption rituals and practices, and diluted them down to a simple process, which is funny is they are very much along the lines of the Kundalini practices of ascension, essentially, or bringing the spirit down into the body. But it's everybody needs to know it, or I think those that are drawn to it will know it and understand it. It's a part of our lives. It's part of who we are, but it's something that we haven't known about because it's been suppressed from us. It's a part of that non-coding DNA that we aren't able to access yet, or we're not accessing yet because those additional layers have not been awakened within us. But as more people begin to, in the consciousness of the earth, as more people, like you're saying, begin to open up their eyes and actually see what's going on, then it's essentially a forced consciousness shift, and so people will begin to see things for what they are. But it's funny because this is the same kind of stuff really that they were doing in the CIA back in. I mean, it's just a form of it really in the Monroe Project, and using technology to manipulate brain waves to get yourself into a higher state of consciousness. That's what a lot of the practices in magic are, that you have to master, is accessing those gamma waves of the brain to access different things. So kind of like going back into the what was it called? Psychotronic, essentially, psychotronic warfare and psychotronic things. If we understand how to, I don't like to use the word manipulate, but manipulate the consciousness around us, or essentially our etheric field or our bioelectric field, which extends upwards of 50 feet or so. If we understand how to use that, how to tune into that, it's a real thing. Yeah. Science has proven that now. Then we can literally turn on shields. We can block things. We can ward off any negative attacks or anything like that. It's pretty freaking amazing what we can do.
Yeah. Talisman and symbols and sigils and spells and sacred chants and different types of things that manifest different things within our reality. And our reality is much lost to us. We've forgotten what it really is about. We've been introduced to this material world of physicality, where we think everything is solid and everything is mechanistic, and we have no ability to change or create anything, which is anything but the truth. Yep. And this state of ignorance that humanity lays within is the reason for our suffering. It's the reason for our current state of affairs, with everything that's happening in the world politically, financially, economically, with the power control structures that are occurring. And people need to wake up. People need to understand and learn this information. Someone just said, Patriotic Pisces said, many Christians say to stay away from yoga and anything like it because of the doors it could open like it is not of their God. And see, that's the thing, is if God is the creator, if God is the embodiment of totality, of absolutism, then nothing can exist outside of his creation, which means that everything within his creation is produced by free will interacting with natural law, determinism and randomness, whereas it is all existent within the mind of God, which means that yoga is a creation of God.
Yeah.
Meditation, exactly.
Yeah. So here's my theory about that, because I was raised in an extremely strict religious organization for up until I was 20, almost 28 years, and that was one of the things that I heard the same thing. No meditation, it opens up your mind to all these things. And so this might be a hard pill to swallow, but religion was actually created to be a controlling construct for the human race. And it was created to be a way to suppress humanity, to keep them under control, to keep them under fear. Remember that one time we were sitting around the fire and I said, if your God starts to take on any of the personalities of a man, it's time to get a new God.
Absolutely.
And so like in the Bible, it says God's a jealous God, God's an angry God, all of these things. Well, you kind of have to think, if the true creator is all loving, which, it's the highest vibrational frequency of the universe, source is just love energy, then, he's not going to be getting jealous or anything like that. The way I see it is that these were the things that were perpetuated and taught to us. And if you were an avid, quote unquote, Christian, like I was, pounded into your brain 3-4 times a week. And you have to think, so what does meditation do? Meditation allows you to go inside, and it allows you to, I'm an avid meditator, have been for over 4 years. It allows you to become one with yourself. It allows you to find the silence, or to be able to focus on the gaps between the thoughts. And there within those gaps and within that silence is where you find true peace and oneness with yourself. And science has also proven that when you enter these states of meditation, what facilitates is a brain and body connection. And you enter a true state of homeostasis and you activate your parasympathetic nervous system. And, you know, Harvard, Yale, Arizona State University, so many universities have written so many documents on the benefits, just the medical benefits of meditation and what it does. And meditation does open us up. But when you ask yourself, is, you know, I like to, this is a conversation I love to have with people about this is, you know, what are you afraid to be opening up to? Because whenever you pray, right, to God, you're wanting to open yourself up to a higher source or who you believe is God, right? And so there's one grand architect, but there's many gods. And so who are you? How do you know that you're truly calling on or communicating with that one person? Well, whenever you go into meditation and you open yourself and you clear the static, so to speak, you begin to have your, well, I'll just phrase it this way, your prayers answered. You begin to have more of a direct communication with your higher self. And some people call that God, some people call that source, universe. Some people have different names for it, you know, prana and ka and all these different things. But at the end of the day, it's the ultimate intelligence. And the reason why is because we're all fractals of source. We're all fractals of God source, of creation, experiencing life in this earth, in this very dense three-dimensional holographic reality. And the reason why most people don't have a relationship with something higher than them is because we're so bombarded with, you know, commercials and TV and radios and fear and all of this stuff, and it creates so much static in our mind we can't even hear our prayers being answered if we want them to be answered. Yep. So all that meditation does is it turns down that static a little bit or a lot, and it allows you to establish a stronger communication. So, you know, that's just my 2 cents.
I like it, and you're right. Is meditation? There's nothing evil or wrong about it. It's the same thing as prayer. It's the same thing as you know, reading a book in a very interesting sense. You know, Shane said first thing we need to do is define God, and I find this an interesting thing because I think a lot of people who follow a formulative religion this is one thing that they don't do. You know, God is omnipresent, omniscient, and
omnipotent.
Yeah, omnipotent. So I say God is very much defined like this. Is in the universe, in life, we can understand what truth is. But see, there's an absolute truth. There's a truth outside of you which is unknowable, unimaginable, incomprehensible. The reason it's unknowable, incomprehensible, and unimaginable, and you cannot understand it, is because it's absolute. It's totality. It is creation outside of time in its complete form. Okay? And see, that's God. And in my world, that God is maybe polarized one way or another. But we'll talk about that polarization and how that actually occurs. But I say that it's actually impartial to its polarization, which means that it doesn't go about influencing its own polarization. It sets aside a set of laws, which the laws are impartial. And the laws dictate the evolution of the system of which it occurs. And so this means that all truths discovered within the system are pertinent to the laws organized, but are self-evident to the individual themselves. Where me and Matt can sit there and say, well, I think God is this, and Matt can go like, well, I think God is this. Neither one of us are wrong. That's just our own interpretation. That's our own self-evident truth that is derived from our interpretation of the absolute. And so if we want to define God, I say simply, God is totality. God is absolute truth. And there's nothing outside of that, because there can't be. Now, there can be lesser gods within that creation, and I completely agree with that. And then Tom Chauncey said, so what about the Gnostic God? I heard they believe in a God that doesn't take part in their darkness. And so this comes into the point of polarization, is you got to remember everything exists in a dualistic potential with an emergent phenomena that comes out of that dualistic potential dependent upon the balance of polarization. These go back to the 7 natural laws of Hermeticism, with one of those laws being the law of polarity, in that all things, even the totality of creation, has a polarization. Now, let me ask you this, and this goes out there for everybody there and even Matt, is if God is impartial but has a polarization, absolutism, totality is impartial. It means it doesn't take part in the creation. It just is. Right? It just is. But it has a polarization. Then what brings about its polarization? Would that be the totality of everything occurring within it at the same time operating within those laws and principles that takes its polarization from one way to another? Or the balance of light and dark?
Yeah. Because you can't have light without dark. You can't have north without south. You can't have, good without bad.
That's right.
Everything in creation outside of our solar system and the whole universe was created with a free will. And it could only be that way. So you have to think that if everything was created that way, then the creator then would also, I would think, be the grand source of that at a certain extent. My ideas about God have changed drastically over the years, because I was, like I said, I was raised as a very strict religious, almost a cult situation. So that had its own idea of God that was imposed upon me. And then I turned into an atheist because I believed that, if that God didn't want to love me for whatever I wanted to do in my life, then I didn't want that God around me anyway. So then I decided to believe. And then science brought me back to believing in a creator. And, we have to think about, this is just something I've done in my life, and I would encourage others to do it, is that we all question everything, right? Even question the God that you believe in. Many of the gods that have been in Bibles, that have been, we'll say documented or written about or whatnot, are really nothing more than, shall I say, superhuman creatures at one point or another, or entities, more powerful entities. Like, for instance, Yahweh was actually, there is a Jehovah, and Yahweh was actually a dualistic entity that had a multiple personality disorder. And this is actually documented in some old Sanskrit text, that this is where the jealous and the angry and then the loving God came from. And, this was a very ancient, very powerful entity that came to Earth many thousands of years ago and influenced humankind. And so, that's why I made the statement before. There are many gods, but there is only one grand architect. There is only one universe. Universal. There is only one absolute. And to kind of establish God as someone, you have to kind of, maybe ask and do a little deep dive to see if the God that you may be believing in is the biggest honcho on the scale, right?
Yeah.
Because, the absolute, I believe exactly what you do, Josh, and we actually haven't talked about this particular thing often, but every what's beautiful about the whole situation is that everyone has the ability to have define God in their own way, and to have their own relationship with God in whatever way that they choose. And some people choose, that it's through prayer, they go to church and they pray. But if that establishes a connection between them and God that allows them to have faith to be able to go on through their life, well, then so be it. That's what it is. And that's great. And that's their connection with God. And if somebody, decides to use meditation or yoga or any other practices to do so, then we're all leading to the same source. And if we think about what the biggest challenges in the human race have been, it's been division. Mm-hmm. And when you think about what has caused the biggest division over the times, it has been religion. And, because, well, my God's better than your God, or you should worship my God because my God's right and your God's wrong. And when you think about a harmonious earth and harmonious humans and peace and, people living in maybe not a paradise, but a better situation than it might be today, there's not going to be large amounts of division, because as a human race together, we flourish, but separated, we fall. And you then kind of have to question what has been the number one key causing the division in all of human history.
Yeah, and we're getting a lot of questions here. And the division thing is an interesting thing, because you're absolutely right. But what we're talking about here is we're talking about human-made gods, or anthropomorphication. We're taking what we see as these things that dominate our existence. Like, for instance, tomorrow is Thursday, which actually derives from Thor's day. Now, Thor is the god of thunder and lightning, and this was derived from storms in the ancient times of people being afraid of them and imagining a god up there creating them, right? And so, one question here is, if God is so my question is God the creator of energy, or is God the energy? Is he the high and the low energy dispersed throughout all of creation, or did he only create that energy? Yes. Yeah. That's the answer. Yes. Yeah. The thing is there is no definition. It's unknowable. It's ununderstandable. It's incomprehensible. Well, you can't know what God is. You can only have a relationship with what you know of the truth. Mm-hmm. And that relationship only derives through your internal connection with yourself. Because I can't know Matt any better than I know myself. Therefore, I can never know God any better than I know myself. That's why we have ipsum te gnosis, which is Latin for know thyself. Mm-hmm. Know thyself is knowing God. And it's not solipsism. It's nothing like this. What it is simply this, is that if we took a measurement of all knowledge, this is someone said about Carl Jung earlier, if we took a measurement of all our different archetypes within our own personality structure, within our own bodily system, of our own mental construct, and we took a measure of all these different things, right? Bar graphs. Then that is my limitation of how well I know myself. Which means that when I experience that part of Matt, I cannot expand beyond what I know of myself in understanding who Matt is. This is why you meet some people and they just completely clash with you. This is why you meet some people and you completely connect with them. Because you get it. You get them. You're on the same wavelength. That wavelength is this level of knowing of yourself in various degrees. Some people just vibe with people on one level, and that's all they need to get through life. But when you go to meet God, when you go to connect with God, or whatever God is, a few things you have to understand is that you're connecting with what you understand God to be, because God is undefinable. God is nothingness and absolutism all at the same time, and I just call that totality. But if you want to know something else, is how about this? Is God, does God send angels down to help you? No. Does God make it where he's pulling you in and out of this creation to help you or save you? No. Absolutely not. Because God is impartial to his creation. For if he was inside the creation, he's no longer God. Mm-hmm. And this is what people have to understand. And so I always attributed to this in the sense of knowledge. I've been in these states of samadhi meditation where I'm in a deep trance-like state, and I come to the point where I knew everything. It was like this instantaneous point where everything was absolutely known. I absolutely felt like I was in the Akashic Records, and I just absorbed every bit of information there was to know. And I knew it. I knew everything. But here's the thing. Since I knew everything, I knew nothing. Mm-hmm. And because I had no questions to ask, because questions only come about from a lack of knowledge. Mm-hmm. And I realized that at that point there is no new growth. There is no new question to ask, of which means that If God is totality, if God is the epitome of all creation, then God exists at that state. Mm-hmm. God exists at the state of not knowing. God exists at the state of not having any questions. God exists at the state of the limitation of creation. For God is that speed limit. Which means that we, inside the creation, are the evolutionary expansive mechanism that adds to God's creation, because it's through us that knowingness can happen, that understanding can happen, that growth and evolution in this creation, even though it is within inside God, it is the way that God knows and learns. And this is why God works through you, because it literally is working with you, and you are it. And it is you. You are an extension of it, a fractal version, as Matt said. You're not God, but you are in God's creation, learning with it. And this is why you must have a relationship with God to learn what God is. This is how I've done it through my life, is having this relationship is just amazing in the sense of how much growth that you have within yourself just from it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very well put. And that is the biggest thing that is has been hidden from humanity, and also one of the biggest things that has been so taboo to talk about. Because if you go around telling people that you are God, or you are of God, or you are from God, well, that's blasphemy. That's right. That's horrible. But it's truth. And that is the whole thing that, going back to, alchemy, the emerald tablets, Thoth, and Hermes Trismegistus, all of these secrets that have been passed down. That's the secret. and that's the secret. There you go. Have a good night, everybody. He's just learned everything.
So there is an old alchemical saying, old hermetic saying, that is, God is within me, but yet I am not he.
Yep.
And the way they explain this is, take a character within a book. I always say, look at Huck Finn, right? Mm-hmm. Mark Twain, or Samuel Clemens, wrote that book. There's a part of Mark Twain written in Huck Finn. Yeah. Absolutely. But Huck Finn is definitely not Mark Twain, and can never be. He's limited by the construct of the book and the pages in the book of a story that's already been written. And Samuel Clemens lives outside of that creation.
Yeah, and another way to look at it, which is kind of trippy, is that you're reading the book that is written about you, yet you are discovering who you are through that book that you're reading about you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Get to know that book.
Yeah, because that's essentially right. That's essentially what the Akashic Records are. It is a massive hard drive of all the experiences that have been experienced through creation, because going back to energy can never be created or destroyed, and that's what, through reincarnation, all of that energy gets stored in the Akashic Records.
Well, that's right. There's no information that's ever destroyed. And so what means that is that limitation, the speed limit of creation, which is God, the speed limit of creation is God, is the totality of knowledge, and existing within that mind to be able, conscious enough to pull information in and out of it is a blessing. It's a gift. And humanity's had that gift for a very, very long time. We just forgot how to use it. Whether that's through deception or whatnot, I believe it is. I believe that even 200 years ago, this world was a completely different place, and that we couldn't even imagine what it was. And that history has lied to us.
It has been stolen from us.
It has been stolen from us. I agree with that.
Yep. Yeah, the pyramids are more along the lines of 50-some thousand years old. But that's a whole nother meeting podcast.
It is.
It's and take this to another level, right? So if we are all fractals of the same thing, then that it gives a whole nother meaning to love thy brother. There's a lot of wisdom and knowledge in the Bible, and thank goodness, because there were wise ones that were still protecting, and as that were reading, and there were slipping in the wisdom of the ancients in the knowledge, even though King James and was it wasn't Pontius, it was prior to him, wanted to completely rewrite it for their own good, to be able to control man. But, whenever we look at someone else, and this is something that's not always easy to practice, but loving everything in creation just the way that you love yourself, because if you hate that, or if you inflict harm on that, you are inflicting harm and hating yourself. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the biggest pitfalls, unfortunately, of humankind. And as consciousness expands and as we begin to emanate on higher vibrations, we will see more of this. There will be more of this. We can't help it. It's happening. Yeah. So you might as well just kind of get on board. Opening that heart chakra and living your life from a point of not selfishness, but from a point of loving, everything and anything around you. And I know that's hard to do sometimes. Trust me. But, and nobody said you have to be perfect doing it. But if anybody wants to read, loves reading, like really loves reading, there is a volume, a 6-volume book. I don't know if you've read this yet. The teachings of the ancient teachings of the masters of the Far East. Mm-hmm. Have you read that one?
I don't think so.
It is an amazing book. And if you like reading about enlightened masters, learning about Jesus, it was essentially an expedition by Brian T. Spalding that was done in 1894. Him and 13 other scholars from America went over to the Far East, and what the reason why they were going was to find the old scribes, the old scrolls, find all of the old tablets and accurately translate them to bring them back to the West. And so it's essentially like a documentation.
What was the name of the book?
The Teachings of the Masters of the Far East by Brian T. Spalding. And it talks about, he just shares his experience. And it's a really wild experience. He meets many enlightened masters over there who practice, samadhi, who are mm-hmm. hundreds of years old, who the things that they document and experience, and the people that they meet, and the knowledge and the understanding. And if you enjoy the Bible like I did, this is I'll just say that there's a lot of puzzle pieces that get put into place. Right. That make a lot of sense. There's some things I want to say, but it'll totally spoil the whole thing. But yeah, if you love reading, it's a wonderful read. And it's pretty easy. Every book, I think, I want to say, is maybe 200, 300 pages, and there's 6 volumes.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now.
Huh. What's going on in the chat?
Oh, they were asking for the book information.
Yeah.
There it is. There's that. Go like that. Go here. Do this. I'm going to go ahead and put that book out there for everybody so they have it.
Yeah, and on Amazon, there's a paperback version for like $30, $40 or something, and you can buy all 6.
All right, there we go. All right, guys. If you're looking for that book right there, there's the link for it. You guys can check that out. It's a 6-book set. I think there's also an audio version out there, Kindle version, so you guys can check that out. But yeah, so I think this is a good conversation. We kind of got off the topic of psychotronics, but that's okay. I think we talked about a lot of cool stuff tonight. And so hopefully that you guys can take all that information and not sleep, because you're going to be contemplating what God is. but that's okay. That is okay. Hey, everybody, I hope you guys all have a great night. You guys take care. And we will see you all tomorrow. Don't forget to subscribe to that YouTube channel if you're watching there. If you are on redpills.tv, please go ahead and subscribe to that channel. If you are on any of our other channels, DLive, Twitch, Pilled, wherever you might be, Facebook, don't forget to follow, like, subscribe, do all those good things. And we'll see you guys tomorrow night, midnight Eastern Standard Time, for another episode of Insomniac Hour. And then don't forget, Friday night, we have Mark Shaw, the reporter who saw too much, subject matter expert on the JFK, RFK, Marilyn Monroe assassination, and everything under the sun pertaining to that topic. It's going to be an amazing show. And then tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to have the Daily Dose, where we potentially could have that special guest that we've been talking about. Been waiting for a confirmation. Sorry, it's a very big guest, so once you guys find out who it is, you'll understand why. But take care. We love you. God bless. See you soon.
Good night.